good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you. I'm your host, Tamara G. Don't forget, you can check us out on all of our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with us right here in Miramar, we have Jane Bond. She is the author of How to Land Your First $1 Million Listing. And she is with us today. So thank you
Yes,
so much for joining us, Jane. We certainly appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you. I'm very honored to be here with you. I mean, it's exciting for me
No,
to
listen,
even
we
be talking about my.
I know. Well, listen, we are excited to even have you here because this book, even though it's How to Land Your First $1 Million Listing, truly this book has been written for people to learn how to be a boss, to make their own way into the world. Tell us a little bit about how you got started doing $1 million real estate. That is just, and not just 1 million, not 2 million, 300 and 400 million dollar real estate.
Right? Um, well, I got started. Well, I mean, let me just think about this really quickly. With my parents being entrepreneurs, and they weren't initially, my dad made my mom an entrepreneur. She was a registered nurse. And I kind of watched them do their thing as I was growing up. And something inside of me always wanted to be a businesswoman because of seeing my parents and headed out towards being an attorney and then turned. So once I understood what business was about, I went directly into having my own business. I've never really worked for anyone. The only job I ever had was, a flight attendant. So I've always created my own business.
Wow.
Um, and that book, what can say about that book, it encompasses everything that I have learned up until this point in time in my life over the several decades of my life. We won't go there.
No,
And
and trust me, no one would know which decade it is. So you're looking good. Well, I wanted to ask this question because you had the foundation from a very young age. Not many people have that. So, how do you think that did shape you versus some people that you see are now trying to become entrepreneurs when that wasn't how they were raised? They just decided one day they don't want to work for anyone else versus someone who grew up as an entrepreneur.
I grew up watching my parents,
Yeah.
watching my father turn my mother into an entrepreneur and watching them work, not 9 to 5, but all the time, but also achieving, you know, a better lifestyle for us, giving us more. And even though they were working all the time, they seemed like they were having a good time and enjoying themselves and enjoying what they were doing. And also, like I said, uplifting us, as a family financially. And we didn't really have that conversation about financial literacy. It was just put upon us. We had to do a job. That was my job. I got older, I turned 14, 15, 16. My job was to go into the bar and learn the business.
Okay.
That's how it started out. And once I saw, the mechanics of creating a business, that I kind of just embraced and carried that through my adulthood and always wanted to be my own boss and carve out my own path in life. You know, Initially, yes, I did think, oh, well, maybe I want to be a lawyer, maybe I want to be a doctor, and it wasn't about you're going to school. It was
Mhm.
about what do you want to do? You see what we're doing. You have a choice, you have an option, but you have to do something. You have to get up out of this house.
Sounds
That was my parents.
I'm sorry,
So
that sounds like my mom. Okay.
yeah, exactly. So when I think back on things, understanding what being taught financial literacy is and creating generational wealth in my family, it wasn't thrust upon us in that manner. We were just put in a position where we had to find out how to make our own way. My parents did anyway.
Right.
We like my mom realized the registered nurse job, even though that was the job to have at the time, the bank teller, the registered nurse, or whatever it wasn't enough to take care of her kids. We had a full house.
Wow.
We had 7 to 10 kids in our house at any given time. And those were my siblings and cousins, and they were living with us in a 4 bedroom, 1 bathroom house. To us, it was a mansion, but we always watch things. Of course, you watch television, you listen to people of wealth, you read the headlines of the papers, and you think, wow, how can I get to that point? Where do I go? So I think that was my journey of understanding, when we were growing up, how our life changed and our surroundings changed, our cars changed, our furniture changed, our clothes changed. That was my beginning of watching my parents go out there and do them, so to
Hmm.
speak. And
And
once I realized that, I said, oh, well, I can do this. I can go out there and create. And that's what I did. I went out there, I started creating my own path, saying, I want to do this, and never thinking I couldn't do it.
which is excellent because I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, number one, are afraid to leave the comfort of a 9 to 5 paycheck. Being an entrepreneur, being your own business, you are dependent upon Jane Bond. That's
At
it.
all times. At all, and let me tell you, I remember one of my first companies I opened, which was an interior design firm. And I remember thinking, is the phone working? It's not ringing. And that's a light bulb went on in my head. And I went, that's because you're not making this phone ring. Figure out how to make this phone ring, because you have to eat, you have to pay your way. You have an apartment in New York City. You can't just, sit here and hope somebody's gonna pay the bills. So, I when I think about all those things, and trust me, there were many, many days that, I sat on the bottom of my shower floor crying, asking God, please tell me if I'm doing the right thing. And I found the strength to get up and do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And failure to me was just not an option. And if I didn't achieve what I wanted, I went on to the next thing. But I never got in my own way. I always kind of said, you know what, I can do this, I can do this. Even the days I didn't want to get up and do it, I did it. So the same, I just applied the same principles with real estate after chasing my tail. And I don't say that lightly. I was like a hamster on a hamster wheel, trying to figure out this business for 4 years. 4 years I went through, like everybody else, selling, trying to get the buyer in my car, not qualifying the buyer, not really understanding, the way you had to position yourself to become that agent.
Okay.
Once I realized how I was supposed to position myself, it was just all business. And I found myself, I said, well, that's just the lazy way of thinking, Jane. You can't think that way. You have to think in the way that you want to win. So how do you get to that point? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? If you don't know, you got to ask somebody. And that's what I did.
And so you asked, and you are now doing. For the folks who don't know, we're talking with Jane Bond. She has written a book. It's called How to Land Your First $1 Million Listing. You deal with how many millions in real estate for people who don't know? And the reason why it's so amazing is because there are not many people that look like us
Oh,
that do this.
well, let me share with you. There's not anyone at the time I was, really, really flourishing. I didn't see
Mhm.
anyone. And it surprised me when the articles started coming out, because I just thought, because I'm in my market, I'm in Naples. I
Mhm.
never even knew where Naples was. I never even knew Naples existed. And
Right.
then when I got here and I didn't see anybody that looked like me, that was, kind of a culture shock. And I was taken aback by it, but I couldn't let that stop me. And I have to say, it never really entered my mind that it would stop me, because of my background in my business acumen and traveling. And I thought, well, you're like a chameleon. You can ease your way into any conversation. You have a lot to offer. So now you need to understand the business part of it.
Mhm.
So once I understood that, and realized that I had to attract the type of client I wanted to service, and then I had to realize I'm in a service business. When you come from a place of servitude, that's when you flourish. That's when you grow. If you're coming from the place where you're desperate and you need to make money, that's a whole nother ballgame in this industry, because you have to service people, and that takes time. And you have to learn the client that you want to service. So a lot of agents make the mistake of not understanding who they are serving.
Mhm.
And they just go and take any client, and hopefully that client will buy or sell with them. And then they go to the next client. Well, in this business, I started out selling 90,000, $135,000 condominiums. In my market, eh, I don't want to say it's nothing, but it's the least one of the least expensive properties or products you can buy, especially in my market. My market, we, like I said, we have properties on the market any given time at 45, 88 million, 60 million, 30 million, 10
Wow.
million, and I was selling small condominiums. And not to minimize that, because $135,000 is a lot of money to a lot of people. And like I
Absolutely.
said, I grew up in a home that was $32,000 with 7, 8, 9, 10 people in it. So, and even though it seemed like a mansion, once you got out of it, you look back and you go, whoa,
How do
that's
we eat?
different.
How
How
do
do
we eat every day?
we even use the same bathroom every day, let alone eat,
Right.
you know? But, my parents, they did what they could. So once I realized that I could pick and choose my client as long as I understood who I was going to service, the ball game changed. Then
And
I,
speaking of, well, I was going to say, and speaking of
right,
change, because I know we've got to wrap up in a little bit, but speaking of change, you are trying to make a difference and a change in the lives of young women all across the country. And you are going to be here in South Florida on our side with the Embrace Girls Foundation, one of my favorite charities. I'm on the board. And you're going to be here for a book signing. So we want to invite people and to tell us quickly before we go why it's so important that you want to give back.
well, when, like I said, when I started growing, when, the business started growing, the word got out there that this, African American girl was becoming this top agent in this particular market. I started looking around saying, my God, and it becomes lonely because you're not sure who to share with,
Right.
who to, pull yourself over in the corner and go, listen, I need you to help me, help me figure this out.
Right.
So, and then also I was always the only one in my company. And I kept thinking to myself, where are my people?
Right.
Why are they selling these properties? This is enough for everyone. Why aren't African Americans selling to African Americans? We have a lot of wealthy African Americans out here.
Hmm.
We're not even visible to those guys. So we have to make ourselves visible so they know that we're out here and we're capable. We're definitely capable. And we're capable from another perspective because we're not just, for me, I have to speak for me personally. When I sell and when I do have a customer that is of color, my perspective is a little bit different. I'm thinking about all kinds of things for them. I'm thinking about return on investment for all my customers, but in particularly when I come across one of my folks, it's just a little bit different for me. And even when I see my colleagues with people of color, I think, why didn't you find me? Did you not know I was here? And you couldn't have missed me.
Well, we know you're here now, trust me. And we know you're going to be here in South Florida. Here's the book. And I love this cover shot.
Thank
Um,
you.
you're going to be here on March 27th, and you're going to be at the Newport Beach Resort. What time is the book signing? We'd love to invite people to come out and join
2
you.
to 4 p.m. I'm so excited to even, have a book signing, and I'm just excited the way the public is receiving the book. Um, I wrote it from my heart. I wrote it for the people that are struggling, the
Mhm.
agents that don't really know who to turn to or how to go about landing their first $1 million listing, or even how to break it. I don't want to say break in because you have to grow into anything you do, how to grow into the $1 million market here and not be afraid to go out there and conquer it because we're strong. We can take on any challenge as long as we take it apart and understand what we're doing with it. It shouldn't be a dream, it should be a goal. And when if it is a dream, it's only a goal with a deadline. You just have to meet that deadline and get to it and do the work. And that's what I want agents to understand. If you do the work, it's a process. You go through the process. This is a marathon. It is not a race, it's a marathon. So it's going to take you time to understand your market, understand your client, and get out there and sell them. And you have to be confident in who you are also, you
We're going
know.
to be talking about all of that on March
Absolutely.
27th at the
I'm
Newport.
ready to share.
Exactly, the Newport Beach Resort, 4 p.m. So come and join us. And of course, Embrace Girls Foundation, thank you so much for finding Miss Bond, Jane Bond.
So
And
happy that they found me. I was really shocked and
uh,
excited, and
well, We're
Come on.
looking forward to seeing you definitely on March 27th. Again, her name is Jane Bond. How to land your first $1 million listing. We're going to be talking more about that then. And thank you so much for joining us today and for the wisdom that you've given. And looking forward to seeing you on March 27th here at the Newport Beach Resort, 4 p.m. Thank you.
Excited to meet you also. And talk about real estate, right?
Yeah, exactly. And life.
And life too. All across
Exactly.
the board.
Thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Miramar. Take
Absolutely.
care. Well, good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. So happy to have you here. Don't forget, you can check us out on all of our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. I'm your host, Tamara G, and with us, believe it or not, I found out she is a native daughter of Miramar. We have Gigi Stetler. She is the CEO of RV Sales of Broward, and you heard me right, Chief Executive Officer of RV Sales of Broward. So welcome to the show, Gigi.
Hi. So
So
nice to meet you.
so nice to meet you as well. And again, heard that you grew up in Miramar and went to Miramar High School.
The funniest thing is, when my publicist reached out to me and about an interview, for Miramar, and I was like,
Right.
I just assumed you knew that I went to Miramar, that I lived or grew up in Miramar.
That is amazing. Well, we're so happy. Welcome home. We're so happy to have you. And wanted to talk to you about, this is Women's International Month,
Yes, it
International
is.
Women's Month, and everything that women are doing. You are the CEO of RV Sales of Broward. So much to talk about there, but let's just start with how did you become interested in the RV sales market? Because that's not normally a market you even see women in.
No, and I wasn't interested. I didn't even know what the letters RV stood for when I first kind of stumbled upon it, and
For those
I
who don't know, recreational vehicle.
yes. And I used to see these signs parked like in the shopping center by the beach, and it said no RV parking. I'm like, what the, I wonder what that is. I never knew. And I I was just finished. I was in the hotel business kind of
Okay.
back in the 80s, Miami Beach, trying to develop some South Beach hotels and get some property sold for a friend of mine. And I kind of got all the hotels sold and sold myself out of a job. So,
So
a,
she's good at what she does, folks.
so a friend of my mother's, which I didn't really grow up with a father, so I kind of looked up to him, and he had purchased a piece of property on 441 and in like Hollywood area, and he there was RVs there, and he bought the property, and he said, "Can you go get rid of all those things, so we can develop the property?" So there I was, I showed up, and it actually was a dealership at some point, so they were liquidating,
Okay.
and there was a manager there that had been working for the the owner, whatever, and so he had just bought the land and all the inventory that was on it. So I was just supposed to get rid of it. And then the next thing I knew, I sold one, and then I took a trade, and then somebody wanted to order one. And the next thing I know, I'm in the RV business.
And that
35 years ago.
and that is truly how life is, isn't it, Gigi? Because you weren't even trying to be in this market, and yet you are.
But it wasn't easy.
Really?
It
Tell us
was,
about it. Tell us about the journey.
you know, and my International Women's Day hashtag is choose to challenge, because when I started, I was 24 years old, and um, I'm actually a less than 10th grade dropout of Miramar. I didn't even finish, but drop out of high school. I showed up to the first dealer meeting after I kind of got my feet wet a little bit. So like 3 months, 4 months into me, I went from a salesperson to manager. He fired the manager, and there I was with all this stuff. And I showed up at the first dealer meeting, and there were 35 dealers on the street on 441. If you ever remember driving up and down from Miramar, down Hollywood, all the way Pompano,
Yeah.
there were
Yeah.
RV dealers on both sides of the street, just like car dealers are now. So I showed up at the first dealer meeting. There I am with my stilettos and my ponytail and my mini skirt, and and there was a bunch of fat cat, good old boy, cigar smoking guys drinking scotch, sitting around talking about everything but RVs. And so I'm like, hi. And so they just, had, and it was, we are part of the association. So it was like a mandatory, monthly meeting. And so I had all these new ideas, and the whole street was closed on the weekends. And I couldn't understand that. And they would close at 5 o'clock on Monday through Friday. I was like, you know, why? But people want to, shop for RVs on the weekend. So I'd bring up these ideas that we should be open on Saturday and Sunday. And
Mhm.
this, the president of the association at that moment, he looked at me and he said, little girl, what are you doing here? You need to go home and bake cookies. There's no place here for you. So I just was kind of shocked, but I listened. So the next month's meeting, I show up and, oh, you didn't get the memo? We had the meeting yesterday. So the next month, I showed up at the meeting. Oh, we're already done. We started an hour early. We didn't think you were coming. And so that
So
was it.
it was intimidation. It was locking you out, and all because of gender. And
Oh,
I know it was a different time, but it's not so different from today.
it's the same. It is the same. I still, 35 years in this business, I work twice as hard to get half as much. And I still fight for that equality. Um, you know, after after that happened, I never went to another meeting. I from that moment on, I started being open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., working 7 days a week. I did it for 14 years, never took a day off but Christmas and New Year's. And little by little, those dealers were closing, folding, retiring, or I bought them. So,
I love
and
it. I
as of
love it.
now, I am the only one standing. There is no other dealers in Fort Lauderdale or in South Florida. I am it. But it wasn't easy. And even till today, um, just backtrack, and I'm not going to bring politics into it, but um, you know, when we had a woman running for president, it just seemed like, okay, we're getting somewhere, kind of thing, and then the election was over, and the very next day, the first date of, you know after the election, um a gentleman drove up here in his convertible Mercedes and wanted to rent a motorhome, and half the people that work for me are women.
Okay.
And so my rental manager, Jennifer, she talked to the guy and he goes, I don't do business with women. So she says, he goes, I want to talk to the owner. Where's the guy? I want to talk to him. So she says, well, you could talk to the owner, but she's a woman. And he threw up his hands. He says, I don't do business with women. And he got in his car and he drove away.
And this was
And
just as
this
recent
was
as
2016.
2016.
And I'm like, is this
Wow.
what we're how is this where we are now? But even with that said, every day when I go out, if somebody comes in for service, and I'd go out with my heels and my clipboard, and because I do all the estimates and stuff, and the guy would say, oh, is the service manager here? I said, your price just went up. And
I love it. I love it.
but they won't respect me. I have to, what do they say? Walk the talk the walk, whatever. So until I open my mouth and say, and oh, you did, oh, look at this, da, 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 and prove myself that I know what I'm talking about, do I earn their business? Whereas I could have a Mickey Mouse service manager walk out, okay, that wouldn't know a thing, and the guy would be handing him a check or a credit card.
And
So,
that
and that happens every day.
Right. And that is the reason why it is International Women's Day and also Women's History Month,
Mhm.
because the fight continues. If you're just now watching and tuning in to Good Morning Miramar, thank you so much for doing so. We have Gigi Stetler. She is the CEO of RV Sales of Broward. She also is a native daughter of Miramar. We're so happy to have her with us this morning. And she is talking about her rise to CEO, the RV market, which, by the way, most people think, in Gigi, correct me if I'm wrong, that RVs are, it is a sign of you've made it, but that more people are doing RVs just because they want uh, the independence of being able to travel and move
Freedom.
around and do whatever they need to do, or they want to see, other parts of the country.
On fire. Our industry is on fire, and it's twofold now because the supply chain is a bit in trouble right now. But the industry's on fire. I mean, it is no, since COVID, there's nothing better than giving you the freedom to travel safely in your own germ-free environment. And with so many people working remotely now, it's amazing. Can you just imagine, like, you obviously can broadcast from your backyard, your front yard, or you could be in an RV on the side of a mountain, broadcasting, so you could work anywhere. And homeschooling now, there's so many families just hitting the road. Real estate's all-time high. People are selling their houses, hitting the road, and the other thing is that so many people have spent so much money on cruises and traveling around Europe and this and that every summer. And this year they stayed home and they were like, well, because we all thought as soon as COVID thing would wind down a bit, people would be wanting to get rid of the RVs. People are coming and trading up and saying, I can't believe how beautiful our own country is. And
And
it's
why had I not done this earlier? That's
exactly.
another
So they're
thing.
kicking themselves, like they didn't spend that time when their children were younger, So now it's a whole new generation. They're now going out with the grandkids and stuff like that. So it's on fire, and there's so many. It's not like the norm. I mean, we have like the millennials stepping into our space, but not just that. I mean, for many reasons, for living full time, selling your bricks and mortar house, or um, you know, working remotely, or having another guest house on the side of your house instead of building. If your family's too large and you want to spread out, you know, bringing your parents home, to be safe, things like that, and spreading out and having, an RV parked in your yard as a second, as a, as a second home kind of thing. So there's so many needs.
Well, let me tell you, I still want to see the movie No Man Land with
Yes.
Frances McDormand, because that is exactly what they're talking about, is
Hmm.
getting into your RV or your camper or whatever, and just traveling the country. And it's kind of a mixture of fiction and fact, because uh, she does go out and do that.
Hmm. She
um,
does. Yeah.
right. And so, do you see that this is a new way that Americans will be living from now on? Like, they will be able to drive your house wherever you want to go.
Home is where you plug in, when when you're RVing. And now there's like so many cool things, like you could completely go off the grid to 2 to 3 weeks at a time with, solar charging systems, lithium batteries, things like that, that you can go off the grid. And it's I think, I think people, after this whole quarantine thing, I think people want to unplug, like literally unplug. And if you don't like your neighbors, you move. It's just, it's awesome, and you meet new people. And the one thing, in the 35 years that I've been in this business, RVers are a different breed of people. They're good people. They're kind. We're actually rolling out a new social media site called the RV Advisors Good Samaritan Social Network. And be good, do good, let's be good together. So a whole social network of RVers just making plans to just be good and help people along the way, along your travels. And it's time for us to be unified and be together, and as one, you know no colors, no race, no genders, no nothing, and I think, I'm looking so forward to hopefully launching tomorrow. And I've been working on
Oh,
this
great.
project for years. And so I'm excited and nervous, but it's going to be, it's going to be fun. And I just think, people, I think they're ready. They're ready to do good. They, do good, be good. They're ready. I think everybody's, needed that cleanse, and get in, whether you're in an RV or wherever you are, just be good.
Well, speaking of wherever you are, and where are you located, RV Sales of Broward, so people can find you or go to your website for more information?
I'm right here in Davie, not far from home.
Uh huh.
3030 Burris Road in Davie.
All right.
You know,
Sounds
my
good.
I just moved my mother out of Miramar. We still had our family home there up until about, she's 94 next month, so she lives with me. And so I moved her out when she was like 80, 88. She was still there by herself. And I
Loving
said, oh,
Miramar. Well, we're glad
yep,
that you guys still love Miramar and glad that uh,
Normandy Street.
okay. Glad that our native daughter has done so well. The CEO of RV Sales of Broward, Gigi Stetler. We certainly appreciate you joining us today, talking about being a female entrepreneur, working your way up in the RV world, and just doing not just great things, but good things. I'm loving this new website that you're going to be launching because we do need to do good,
We
and
do.
if everybody could do more good in the world, we'd all be better. So
We need to pay it forward right now, you know?
absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. And if people want more information, how can they find you guys on the web?
You can go to rvsalesofbroward.com, or you can go to gigistetler.com and you can hear all my other enterprises, and or the RV Advisor, and then soon the RV Advisor's Good Samaritan Club. So
Sounds good. rvsalesofbroward.com is the website. This is
mhm.
the CEO, Gigi Stetler. Thank you so much for joining us at the City of Miramar's Good Morning Miramar. We certainly appreciate it, and we'll talk
I
to you
miss
next
you,
time.
Miramar.
Oh, and we miss you too. Have a good
I
one.
do visit though.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. We appreciate those dollars coming back into the city. So thank you.
Exactly.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everyone.